A lot of leaders love AI without fully understanding it.
Decision makers within organizations that then will go, can't we just use AI for that?
Yeah.
And then the question really should be,
Hi everyone, we got a really exciting topic for you today. We're going to be discussing AI in the enterprise systems industry. It's really a focus of pretty much every industry and every individual and every podcaster out there. We're by no means experts, but we'll give you some of our experiences and opinions on the topic. So I hope you enjoy the show. And yeah, let's get into it. Rog, we can just start with some general thoughts on AI and the fact that it's such a focus of the industry today, and everyone's talking about it. So let's just, first of all, boil it down a little bit to our industry and how we're going to address it.
Let's do that. Let's take it from that larger idea and why it's become so prevalent right now. Let's put it out there. The reason that AI has become a conversational piece is because people are getting a piece of consumer AI in generative AI. But AI has been around for a while, right, Mile?
Yeah, that's right. It's been around for decades. It's actually in everything we do. When it comes to systems and computers, our phones, we're basically, every day we're consumed by AI, and we just don't realize it. Even in ERP, which is a particular focus of what we do as an organization, we help organizations with selecting ERP. Your ERP has AI inbuilt into it. So that's really important for people to understand. You've already been impacted by AI, you're being impacted by AI, and most ERPs have made it a focus, right?
Yeah, like the search functionality that ERP has, right? The fuzzy logic and some of that stuff that's within there.
That's right.
The base points of some of those things.
I mean, another really good example is OCR, so Object Content Recognition. And for example, to make it really simple, invoice scanning. That's been around for a while, and that is a very basic AI, but it is AI without a doubt.
Yeah, that's right. It's just that it's become more, I guess, like what's happened is the technology is improved and people are expecting a higher level of that because of their exposure to generative AI. And taking your example and maybe building on it a bit further, the way that Gen AI has been used in invoice scanning is that instead of people needing to code every line, there's the movement into these large language models. That means it can scan any document and then read the fields that are in there and then make a categorization based off of the language
predictive
that's there. So it goes, instead of going, this is where the invoice number is, it goes, well, that says invoice, that's a number, that must be the invoice number.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And I think it would be worth us discussing a little bit of the application and some of the industries that we see impacted by it, because a lot of industries will be thinking, well, AI has been around for a while, it's now a hot topic, everyone's talking about it. But which are really the industries that are going to be massively impacted, in your opinion?
That's a really interesting question. I think that there's no industry that's not going to be touched by AI or hasn't already been touched by it. But I guess part of it is then breaking it down and going, well, how much of that is at enterprise level and how much of that is at personal productivity level and efficiency or team efficiency level? And I think that what we're seeing is a lot of use cases in the individual productivity or team productivity. And in the more enterprise grade stuff, there's only a few very specific examples of that, and in larger organizations. So we could talk to that, but I think for the general audience and user of it, it's really what they can do as a team or for those use cases. And examples of that is using Gen AI for generation of emails or the summarization of documents or taking minute notes.
Exactly, yeah. So, we use it. I know we use it for a couple of different applications, and one of them is to take minutes during meetings. Right? A lot of the work that we do, where we capture insights from customers in order to be able to do the analytics of some of the pain points and some of the improvement opportunities, we use that AI that takes minutes and summarizes that analytical content.
In my team in particular, right, in the A and B team, we use that in the workshops that we hold to help categorize that. Yeah. It's a great way for us to augment some of the manual stuff that we used to have to be taking. But that's the extent of our use cases for that, and a lot of use cases. It takes that, it summarizes what was said, but it does it based off of probability. And
That's
so
right.
the next portion of it is that you still need knowledge workers or a higher level of judgment to be able to go, well, is what Gen AI produced something that we can use?
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, because in organizations, a lot of organizations are thinking, a lot of individuals within organizations are thinking of AI as a threat. In actual fact, what I've seen and how organizations are talking about it, and some of the more advanced organizations that are some of the more mature organizations when it relates to AI, what they're saying is that it augments an individual's work. It doesn't replace it. It doesn't remove it. And it doesn't diminish it in any way. It actually helps augment and helps that individual add more value, because it's putting a focus on that individual's experience more so than some of the administrative tasks. And that's really the true application of today's AI when it pertains to enterprise systems.
That's right. Like it's not there. Oh, well, arguably there's some cases where it could automate some things, but that's not the predominant use case. The predominant use case is then to augment and help support.
Yeah.
It's very rare that you're starting it, seeing it as a consumer, like client scene thing. It's to help the people who are producing that service. So
That's right.
in things like retail, take it for when there's a skills shortage at the moment, right? So not everyone can build up all of the technical knowledge around an item. In the past, you'd have to know a little bit about that item and the coding around it. Now, with generative AI, you could write or ask a chatbot using language that you know that's reading off of that data set and reading the descriptions to be able to help you go, well, here's some suggested parts, instead of them needing to know that part off the top of their head. So it helps, but for them to know that that's right, there's some key fundamental things that have to be right. And I think that's where a lot of our clients are at. It's getting that foundation right to be able to use AI correctly.
Yeah, that's right. Because a lot of AI's value is derived from having the right inputs. And for organizations that are looking at enterprise systems, the right inputs are data and the governance and quality of that data. So, as you said, I'd like to focus on what are some of the things that need to be set up in an organization that you see. What are some of the things that need to be in place? And what are some of the things that companies need to do first before they tackle the challenge of bringing AI into the organization? Because you can preempt and go too early with AI if you're not prepared, right? So what are some of those things?
The risk of doing that, right, if you go too early, is that you're surfacing bad data. And AI is really good, well, generative AI, and that's probably how I should frame it. Generative AI is really good at making you sound like an expert.
Yeah.
So it talks in great English, better than I would. But the way that it does that is based off of the data set that it's been trained on.
Right.
So if you're training it off data that is inherently bad, then it's going to sound really convincing for something that is not the outcome.
That's right. Yep. So it's going to use that as its source of truth, and it's going to believe it, and it's going to create an answer based on that data. So
that's right.
It's if I interpret that correctly, you would be using bad data to give you a bad outcome.
Which
would be AI conducting its purpose in the right way, but because your data is not correct, you would be getting what that data would be giving you if you did manual analysis on it.
Age-old adage, right?
You would just be getting it quicker and making the bad decision quicker.
That's right. Age-old adage around data. Bad data, rubbish in, rubbish out.
But it's not just about the data. I think it's also the structure of the data and just your general governance of data. So a lot of organizations realize what I'm finding is that a lot of organizations realize the value of capturing and storing the data. But a lot of organizations think that will magically somehow be consolidated and will come up with the right information. And unfortunately, in the enterprise system space, that's not the case. That might be the case in generative AI when it's pertaining to general knowledge.
Yes.
On things that have great governance in terms of data and some other industries, but not in enterprise systems, because it's pertaining to that particular organization and it's using your particular data.
That's right.
The sample set is a lot smaller. Therefore, some of the insights that might pop out with wrong, from wrong data will be very bad, right?
So if you're using it for things like customer profiling, and your profiles and information that you have on customers and the way that they're thinking is all biased towards one group or one section, that's all you're going to be.
Or if it's wrong or
That's
not
right.
up to date.
Yeah,
Right.
there's just so much things that could bias that, and a part of that is, the main part of that is that the data governance part of it. And so I think when people think about AI, they think all of the really attractive things around the use cases, and we go back to like movies and our imagination. So we're going, there's all of this stuff that it could do, but the very basis of it is still comes down to how good your data structures are that support this tool.
And you touch on a good point there. It's very easy for organizations to get distracted by the hype. It's probably a good idea for us to make a distinction between differentiate the generative AI when it pertains to our individual needs. So things like health, things like medicine improvement, things like life longevity. There is a lot of progress and a lot of investment and a lot of movement in that area of AI when it pertains to improving the general life of individuals and society.
Yeah.
But in terms of enterprise systems, practicality becomes paramount because to implement AI in an organization, it takes a lot of investment and a lot of effort and a lot of time, and it's a distraction to a certain extent. Yes, it has a lot of value, but you need to be very careful with the practical uses of it.
Yeah, that's right. And you've got to think of all of the use cases that you've got there.
Yeah.
So sometimes we come across leaders in our space, or I guess decision makers within organizations that then will go, can't we just use AI for that?
Yeah.
And then the question really should be, should we be using AI for that?
Or are we prepared for it?
Yeah, so it's those questions that come up, because sometimes the use cases that they have, there's already existing technology or ways, process changes, people, and the way that you structure that could get you that same outcome.
Yeah.
That doesn't require you to have all of that data codified a certain way, or to have a dedicated data scientist in there to be able to write that.
That's right.
To write that for you. So there's parts of that. But then there's other use cases for individual productivity within an organization that you have applications that are readily available that people can use. And so it's being clear about the use case, identifying it, and it's like every improvement project, making sure you've got a business case for going forward for a wider application, or whether it is really just a individual or team product.
Yeah, I mean, I know we use it, for example, for searching for some of our documents. So we've applied AI at SMC to a particular set of information, and for ease of search and finding particular information, we use AI to do that. So we free text type, like the same way that we would ask one of our colleagues to go and find that piece of information or what they know about that subject. We can type in a question and it will find the relevant document. Or it might be a prompt to something that I've done or you've done in the past, and then we'll type in that phrase almost as if we were just thinking it in our head, and it will find that document. So we've done that in a very specific area of the business, but that's the applicability to us as a professional services organization.
That's right. And for us as a professional service organization, all it really does is summarize that and bring it to a surface. But for a professional services organization such as ourselves, it doesn't take the person out of it, because it still gives us a possible answer, but it is still a probability, right? So
and you still need the context.
Then it takes us to have judgment to look over it. And that's really a lot of the use cases for AI in knowledge-based work.
In knowledge-based work, yeah, that's right. It's not just, any type of professional services, the legal profession, any type of advisory. Maybe let's talk about another industry. For example, in the manufacturing industry, how does AI, where have we seen from our analysis and blueprinting work, so the process improvement side of things, where have we seen some of the improvements related to AI be focused around when it pertains to the manufacturing
There's a few different places where we've seen some of this, and some of it is leading, and some of it is this productivity stuff.
Yeah.
So for the productivity improvement stuff, an example I gave was around those technicians, right?
Yeah.
So in engineer to manufacture organizations, sometimes you have standard items that you'd be using when you're creating a new configured or engineered product, but you still want to be using standard products. And you've got to set up that bill of material.
Right.
Some of the newer engineers may not understand all of those standard products. So having the generative AI over there to help with the descriptions will help them then go, well, these are alternative parts I can use to fit that design.
Sure.
So there's that. But further
Or
down
even as they're assembling it,
that's
it
right.
could suggest to them that this doesn't quite fit the process.
That's right.
Therefore, are you sure you want to continue?
But where it gets really cool, and you're getting onto the bleeding edge use cases, is where they've set up cameras, or where they've got augmented reality, or they've got sensors involved to gather more data. But again, it's the data and the ability to have clean data around that process and have the cameras set up right. But if you've got that, then you can actually look at process compliance as it's going down the manufacturing line.
Yeah.
And so it can go, well, whenever it goes down this line and we have a defect, you can look back at that and it can predict whether it's going to get to a defect.
That's
or
right. Yeah.
when you've completed the steel fabrication, you can put on augmented reality glasses and it goes, how well does that fit the design that I originally had, and where are the stress points on these?
Yeah.
So then it becomes more predictive. But those things are more on the bleeding edge of
That's right.
technology.
It's very advanced.
And to be completely honest, a lot of our clients aren't there yet because their data and where they get the data isn't right.
That's a really good point in terms of maturity. And we did a bit of an analysis on this, actually. I don't know if you remember when we did the research. And it's interesting. A lot of leaders, I'll include myself in this discussion, but
this quote.
a lot of leaders love AI without fully understanding it. So while I might understand more than others or less than others in particular areas, I still don't understand the complete application of it in every single scenario. And it's becoming clearer, but there is that sense of, am I going to miss out? The reality is most organizations, I would say the majority of organizations, are not prepared to fully leverage the benefits of AI yet. And there are a lot of things that they should do beforehand to prepare themselves to take full advantage of it, including ourselves, for example. So, and hence why we're doing things to, we've set things in motion to be able to fully leverage AI into the future. We've started applying it in very specific use cases, but not holistically yet. So that's what we found from the research is that, yes, we love it. Do we fully understand it? No. And that's one of the quotes was, leaders love it without fully understanding it. And that often happens, but that bleeding edge that you were talking about, it's really, it's further down the road. And we need a lot more maturity from an organization perspective, but also of the tools and of the way that we've set up the foundation. Would you agree with that?
I completely agree with that. And I guess part of it is also the human element around it. I think that in Australia in particular, there is a lot of fear around technology, and I guess it's also the regulations that we have here and how we view that. So a lot of that is a cultural portion of it as well that needs to be overcome. Because as we've seen in our change management practice, getting people just to adopt to a certain way of working is difficult.
Yeah.
So applying that and then saying, well, we've got data structures that we have to adhere to, and then applying the models over the top of that, it becomes a little more difficult.
Yeah. And there is a real fear that although AI is great in some applications, just turning off the switch is not possible at the moment with where AI is at the moment. It is still very far away from what operators can do. And in most industries, like I mentioned before, it's about augmenting that person's role in the organization, not about anything to do with replacement or removing that individual from the job. It's about the augmentation of their role and of their work. And in essence, it is creating much more value in what that individual is delivering to the organization. At least that's what I've found when AI has been applied successfully, is that it's an augmentative tool. It's not a replacement.
Yeah.
And I think that, I don't know if you agree with this, but that's pretty much in every application. I mean, AI in a sense today is being used to remove some of the low value or no value add activities within processes across various industries, particularly in our industry, through automation and predictive analytics and things like that. It's really being used in that sense.
Yeah, so it's doing that so that it can surface things easier for someone to make a judgment call. That's
as a leader,
that's really where it's at.
As a leader, if you can get something that predicts the future to a certain extent, or at least gives you, based on what you've fed me, this is what I predict will soon happen, or these are the 2 or 3 scenarios that might happen. And that, for a leader, that is really helpful. And that's what I think leaders are really excited about, which is why they love it.
That's right. Like one of the use cases that we've seen is the use in supply chain. And you know how hard it is to track lead times in the current environment.
And demand plan.
Yes. So one of the use cases we've seen is that they're using information gathered up into a model that then goes, well, because this has happened here, then it would have this impact, not just to your supply chain, but all the way into your manufacturing and all of these other components. But again, that's because they had a specific set of data points that they could use for that.
That's right.
And it still required individuals then to look at that suggestion and go, yeah, that is plausible because...
And it used to be very manual and it's... Yeah.
That's right. So it's sped that process up, but it still gets it to the same point where it's going, it gets someone to think, just because it correlates to this, does that mean that that's the cause of it? Yeah. Or that's actually what's going to happen. And so it gets to that judgment point much faster.
Yeah. What do you see as the main pitfalls about how companies approach AI these days?
All right, so apart from what we've already been discussing around all the data components of it, the other part of it is then understand or the expectation of what AI can do.
That's right.
So
unrealistic expectation in some cases
of what it can do. So thinking that it will actually think it through. Because I think it's got to do with the term we use. We call artificial intelligence. So call it intelligent is to think that it's able to make a judgment call.
Well, there are different levels of intelligence as well inside a tool, right? So over the last decade, it has been leveling up with each iteration. Right. And the thing about it is that at some point it will reach that point where it's super intelligent and it is predictive and it almost doesn't need all of that structured input, but we're not at that point yet.
Yeah, and I guess part of that is it's still basing it off of, I guess, mathematics at the end. Like it's a logical thing. And sometimes some decisions around business require a bit more than that. And whether we can codify whether we can codify that and get that AI to understand that should we be doing it really should be the question that's asked there.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You make a really good point. Business decisions that leaders make are not always numbers and figures, and they're not binary. So there are business decisions that need to get made, which I don't know if we're close to getting something that can make those decisions. With all the data, even if it's the best structure and all of that kind of stuff, I don't know if it can replace the decision making and some of the analytics that humans can do, because there is, even though at our work we like to think that emotion and future thinking and individual preferences and opinions don't go into what happens at work, it does in a lot of places. And I think focusing on AI as simply a binary model is not the right way to apply it, right? Yeah. Because in the future it will become dynamic.
Yeah, and what impact? Because what have we trained it on and what's that outcome?
Yeah, that's right. Predicting? It's learning essentially from us at the moment, right? Yeah. But, having said that, there is applications of AI where it is actually learning of itself. And,
I think that's a topic we don't want to delve into. We could talk through all of that.
Well, it's not only that. I think when you look at where is AI, where is the massive investment in AI? It is typically to do with health, with education, with very societal challenges, right? So it's about making health more accessible.
Yes.
It's about improving things in the health and education space. So in our industry, it has very specific applications, right? And at the moment, to date, it's been mostly about automations and about minimizing the administrative tasks and some of the back office functions.
Yes.
And about augmenting individuals' work.
Which makes sense, because in the small and medium businesses that we help, we know that from analysis, there's usually 130 hours in a year that's just administrative tasks. So if we can shave off some of that, that's a lot of hours, and that's per
Huge value for an organization.
For an organization, especially in the small medium enterprise space.
Yeah.
But then the question is that the only tool that can get that? And that's where that analysis and understanding of those processes, people, is needed, and that's why it's augmentation.
I think the other thing that I just wanted to touch on as well is, I mean, we're talking about AI and it's the buzzword at the moment and it's not going away. But it's also important to note that AI doesn't remove the need to still do the things that you need to do well.
Yeah.
And it doesn't remove the need for proper systems, the need for enterprise solutions, the need for specialized functionality from technology. And AI is not the only technology, it's an augmentation of technology. So it's really important, aside from the data and the governance and the quality, which we've already spoken about, I think it's about having modern, scalable tools that can interact with AI and that incorporate AI within themselves, because that's really the secret to it. AI is not a silver bullet or it's not an answer to all of our questions. It's one thing to consider inside this strategy that a company or an organization takes going forward, and it should be talked about and it should be considered, but it's not going to form the central part of what the organization still needs to do in the background. You still need to do all of the things well along the way in order to be able to leverage AI. AI works best when you've got your house in order. That's when you can get the most value, in my opinion.
Oh, and 100%. And that's what we're seeing within our review and strategize work, right? And so when people and the leaders come up to us going, can you talk to our team about how we can roadmap for AI? It's probably a step back.
Yeah.
Have you got the right foundation?
Exactly, yeah.
Is your house in order to be able to use that?
Yeah. So the answer is yes, we can roadmap it, but I think what you'll find is that it's not quite as buzzwordy as it's been advertised in the media. And I think not that it will go away, but I think it will just normalize and balance itself, right? And it will become part of every strategy, and every leader should be talking about it. If you're not considering AI in your organization, you're making a grave mistake. But if it's the only thing that you're focusing on and basing the entire strategy on that, then that is, in my opinion, also a mistake.
Yes.
Roger, we've been talking about AI and some of the things that need to be set up and how to consider it, and just the general thoughts on AI in the enterprise software industry. But let's talk a bit about resourcing, because I think it's important for organizations to understand how they need to resource, and more so than just the individuals they need to get into organizations, what steps do they need to do before, and how can they define their AI initiatives within an organization?
The same way.
Just explain.
Yeah, it's
explain how we.
It's the same way that you would be defining any use case. The first portion of it is understanding, well, what is the outcome that you're trying? What's the problem that you're trying to solve?
Yes.
What is that? And we do that a certain way. We go in either at a strategic level or we do it at the process level. But it's understanding, look, what is that hypothesis? What's that question? What's that goal that we're trying to solve? Once we've got that clear, then it's analyzing all of the different things that you could do. And if AI is one of those, then it's how would it do that? Yeah. And that's where you can start talking about resource. But the first part of it is, what is the problem? And is AI actually the solution for that problem?
And I guess once you've defined the problem, it's then about prioritizing. So, it's very rare that you would find problems and you would have resourcing and answers and funding and the ability to execute all of them. So then it's about prioritization of those goals inserting them into the right place of an execution roadmap, and then resourcing that.
Yeah. What's cool though with AI or Gen AI tools is how readily available some of them are.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
it's the ability to kick off those pilots and the tests a little bit easier now than some of the older AI technology.
Yeah, so the roadmap, the time to product or the time to minimum viable product or a working concept is much quicker than traditional technologies.
That's right. But it's still back to the fundamentals when you're going
that's
through
right.
whether it's a viable use case at the start.
Exactly. Yeah, you can do it very quickly, but the result may not be good because of your data, because of the connections to the other technology. Yeah, I understand that. Well, look, thanks, Reg, very much for joining me. I know we've worked together a lot in the past, so we've had these discussions in various different formats. So thanks very much for coming on. And for everyone out there, I hope you really enjoyed this chat. Some of it was generic in nature, some of it focused on our particular industry. So hope you enjoyed it, and have a great day.